The first contraction hit me at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, and by noon that same day, I was holding my sister's daughter in my arms, crying harder than I'd ever cried in my life. My name is Nora, and 9 months ago I made what I thought was the most beautiful sacrifice a sister could make. Genesis had been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. 3 years of failed IVF cycles, miscarriages, and watching her marriage to Dominic slowly crack under the weight of their desperation. When she asked me to carry their baby, I didn't even hesitate. "Nora, please," she'd begged that night in my kitchen, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You're the only person I trust with this. The only person who could love this baby the way I do." Dominic had stood behind her, shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. "We'll take care of everything," he'd said quietly. "All the medical bills, your time off work, everything. We need this." I'd reached across the table and grabbed Genesis's hands. Of course I'll do it." The pregnancy was textbook perfect. Genesis came to every appointment, her hand pressed against my growing belly like she was trying to absorb every kick, every flutter. We'd spend hours talking about nursery colors and baby names, planning how we'd raise Olive together as a family. Genesis would be mom, I'd be the favorite aunt who spoiled her rotten. "She's going to love you so much," Genesis would whisper to my stomach. "You're giving her life, Nora. I'll never be able to repay you for this." But something shifted after the birth. In the hospital room, when the nurses placed Olive in my arms first, standard procedure, they said, Genesis's face went cold. She snatched the baby away without a word, and suddenly I wasn't allowed to hold her anymore. "The baby needs to bond with her real mother," Genesis said, not looking at me. Real mother. The words hit like a slap. Dominic wouldn't meet my eyes. When I tried to talk to him about it, he just mumbled something about Genesis being hormonal and stressed. But I caught him staring at me sometimes with this look I couldn't decode. Guilt, maybe? Fear? The nurses kept asking if I wanted to stay another night, if I needed help with recovery, but Genesis was already packing up Olive's things. "Nora's fine," she said briskly. "She's tough, always has been." I went home to my empty apartment with stitches, swollen breasts, and a hole in my chest where my heart used to be. But I told myself it was normal. New mothers were protective. Genesis would come around. 3 days later, she did come around. With a lawyer. I was still in my pajamas when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Genesis holding a manila envelope, a man in a suit beside her. My heart jumped. Maybe they were bringing Olive to visit. Maybe the lawyer was just handling some paperwork about the birth certificate. "Genesis!" I swung the door open, smiling. "Is Olive with you? I've been dying to—" "Nora Evans," the lawyer interrupted, stepping forward. "You're being served with a restraining order." The words didn't compute. I looked at Genesis, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me this was some kind of mistake. Instead, she lifted her chin and stared at me like I was a stranger. "What?" "You need to stay away from my family," Genesis said, her voice flat and cold. "Away from my daughter." "Your daughter?" The envelope felt heavy in my shaking hands. "Genesis, what is this? What's happening?" "You've become obsessed," she continued, like she was reading from a script. "Dominic and I are concerned about your mental state. The way you've been calling, texting, showing up unannounced. I called twice to check on the baby. It's unhealthy, dangerous even." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Evans, you're prohibited from contacting Genesis or Dominic Wheeler, their child, or coming within 500 feet of their residence. Violation of this order will result in arrest." I stared at the papers, the legal language swimming before my eyes. Emotional instability, inappropriate attachment, threat to the welfare of the minor child. "Genesis," I whispered. "I carried her for 9 months. I gave you everything." For just a second, something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, but then her expression hardened again. "And we're grateful," she said, "but your job is done." They left me standing in my doorway, holding legal papers that painted me as a monster, while somewhere across town, The baby I'd grown in my body was learning to recognize voices that weren't mine. I called my mom the second Genesis, and her lawyer disappeared down the hallway. "Mom, something's wrong. Genesis just served me with a restraining order." "Oh, honey." Mom's voice was careful, measured. "She told me you might call." "She told you?" My legs gave out and I sank onto my couch. "Mom, what did she say?" "She's worried about you, Nora. She said you've been intense about the baby." "Intense?" I was practically shouting. "I carried that baby for 9 months. I have stretch marks and surgical scars and—" "I know, sweetheart. But maybe you got too attached? Maybe it's better if you take some time to—" "To what? Pretend I didn't give birth to her?" The line went quiet. When Mom spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Genesis showed me some of your texts, the ones where you called Olive our baby. Because that's what Genesis called her. For 9 months she said we were doing this together." "Nora, honey, I think you need to talk to someone. A professional." I hung up. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with messages from aunts, cousins, family friends. Genesis had been busy. The story was already spreading. Nora had a breakdown after the birth. Nora was obsessed with a baby that wasn't hers. Nora was dangerous. My cousin Maeve was the only one who called to actually listen. "This is insane," she said after I explained everything. "I was there when Genesis begged you to do this. I heard her crying about how you were the only person she trusted. Try telling that to everyone else. What does Dominic say about all this?" I paused, remembering that night 2 weeks ago when he'd shown up at my door alone. Genesis had been at her book club, and he'd looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" he'd asked, glancing around the hallway like he was being followed. He'd sat on my couch, head in his hands, and started talking. Really talking, for the first time since I'd known him. "She's not the same person," he'd said. "Ever since we started trying for a baby, it's like she became someone else. Controlling, manipulative. She monitors my phone, my emails. Last week she threw a plate at me because I forgot to take my vitamins." "Dominic, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm scared of her, and I'm scared of what she might do to you." "To me?" He'd looked up then, his eyes red-rimmed. "She talks about you like you're the enemy now, like you're trying to steal Olive from her. I keep telling her you're not, but she won't listen." "But the surrogacy agreement—" "Nora, there is no agreement. Not a real one. Genesis told me she'd handle the legal stuff, but when I asked to see the papers last week, she said they were in process. I think she's been lying to both of us." My blood had gone cold. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I think she's planning something to make sure you can never claim any rights to Olive." He'd reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "I need you to know that whatever happens, I tried to stop it. I tried to protect you." "Dominic, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." Now, sitting in my living room with Maeve on the phone, I wished I'd pressed him for more details. "Nora? You still there?" "Yeah, sorry. Dominic, he tried to warn me, but I didn't understand what he meant." "Warn you about what?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a notification. Facebook. Genesis had posted something. The photo showed her and Dominic in the hospital, Olive sleeping peacefully in Genesis's arms. The caption made my stomach drop. "So grateful for our beautiful daughter Olive. Unfortunately, we've had to take legal action against our gestational carrier who has shown concerning behavior and an unhealthy attachment to our child. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time as we protect our family. New mom. You're blessed. Protecting our baby." The comments were already pouring in. Heart emojis, congratulations, and worse. People I'd known for years writing things like, "Some people just can't handle surrogacy," and "Hope you're all safe." "Maeve, I have to go." "Nora, don't do anything stupid." I hung up and stared at the post. Gestational carrier. Like I was some kind of hired incubator. Like I hadn't spent Christmas morning with Genesis picking out tiny socks, hadn't held her hair back when morning sickness hit her by proxy, just from watching me throw up. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Nora, it's Dominic. Don't hang up. What do you want? I need to see you. Tonight. There's something you need to know about Genesis, about what she's planning next. I have a restraining order. She's not here. She's at her mother's with Olive. Please, Nora. After tonight, it might be too late. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Dominic showed up at my door at 11 p.m., looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like someone was following him. Are you wearing a wire? I asked, only half joking. Jesus, Nora, no. He pushed past me into the apartment. We need to talk. About what? How you and your wife destroyed my life? About how she's about to make it worse. He pulled out his phone. She's planning to file a police report tomorrow. She's going to claim you threatened her. I haven't even talked to her since. She doesn't care. She's going to say you called her, that you said you'd take Olive back by force if you had to. My hands started shaking. That's insane. I would never. I know that. You know that. But Genesis has been building a case against you for weeks. Screenshots of texts taken out of context, a journal documenting your erratic behavior, witness statements from people who barely know you. Witness statements saying what? That you seemed too attached during the pregnancy, that you talked about Olive like she was your daughter, that you made comments about Genesis not being fit to be a mother. I never said that. I know. He sat down heavily on my couch. But she's convincing. She's always been good at making people believe her version of events. I paced across the room, my mind racing. Why are you telling me this? Why are you helping me? Because I can't live with myself if I don't. He looked up at me, and I saw something broken in his eyes. She's not the woman I married, Nora. She's become someone I don't recognize. Then leave her. With what? She controls everything. The bank accounts, the house, even my car is in her name. She made sure of that years ago, said it was for tax purposes. He laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. Dominic, what do you want from me? He pulled out his phone again, this time opening the voice recorder app. I want to tell you the truth, all of it, and I want you to record it. What? Genesis doesn't know I'm here. She thinks I'm at my brother's house, drinking myself into a coma like I have been every night since Olive was born. He held out the phone. Record this conversation. Use it to protect yourself. I stared at the phone. This feels like a trap. It's not. I swear on Olive's life, it's not. Something in his voice made me believe him. I took the phone and hit record. State your name and the date, I said. Dominic Wheeler, March 15th, 2024. He took a deep breath. I'm here to tell the truth about what my wife Genesis has done to Nora Evans. For the next hour, he talked. He told me about Genesis's plan to cut me out from the beginning, how she'd never intended to honor any promises about me being part of Olive's life. He admitted that there was no formal surrogacy agreement because Genesis had deliberately avoided creating one. She said legal contracts would complicate things, he said. But really, she wanted to make sure you had no rights to Olive at all. But she promised. She lied about everything. The whole time she was telling you that you'd be Olive's favorite aunt, she was telling me that you were just a vessel, that once the baby was born, we'd cut you out completely. My chest felt tight. Why didn't you stop her? I tried. God, I tried. But she has this way of making you feel crazy for questioning her. She'd cry, say I didn't trust her, that I was choosing you over our family. He rubbed his face. She's been emotionally abusing me for years, Nora. I just didn't have a name for it until recently. The restraining order was her idea. She filed it the day after Olive was born. She'd already written the petition, already had the lawyer lined up. She planned this whole thing. And the Facebook post? She wrote that weeks ago. She showed it to me, asked if I thought it was sympathetic enough. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Nora. I should have warned you sooner. I stopped the recording. What happens now? Now you have proof. Proof that she's been lying, manipulating, planning this from the start. He stood up. But Nora, you need to be careful. If she finds out I was here, if she finds out about this recording, what will she do? I don't know. But she's desperate to keep Olive away from you, and desperate people do desperate things. He headed for the door, then turned back. There's something else. Something I didn't say on the recording because I can't prove it yet. What? I think she's been drugging me. Small doses of something in my coffee, my food, just enough to make me foggy, compliant. I started making my own meals last week, and suddenly I can think clearly again. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with a recording that could change everything and the terrifying knowledge that my sister was capable of things I'd never imagined. I called Freddie. Freddie arrived at my apartment at 7 a.m. with coffee and a legal pad, looking like she'd been up all night researching. Play it again, she said, settling into my kitchen chair. I hit play on Dominic's recording for the third time. Freddie took notes, occasionally pausing to rewind sections. This is gold, Nora. Absolute gold. She tapped her pen against the pad. Admission of fraud, emotional abuse, conspiracy to deny parental rights. I'm not the parent, though. I was just the surrogate. Were you? Because according to this, there was no legal surrogacy agreement, which means, legally speaking, you're Olive's biological mother until proven otherwise. My phone buzzed. Text from Mom. Family dinner Sunday. Genesis wants to clear the air. Please come. Don't go, Freddie said, reading over my shoulder. Why not? Because it's a setup. She's going to ambush you in front of the whole family, make you look unstable, get witnesses for her case. Maybe I should go. Maybe I can finally tell everyone the truth. Freddie grabbed my shoulders. Nora, listen to me. Genesis has been planning this for months. She's 3 steps ahead of you. Don't walk into her trap. But I was already typing back. I'll be there. Sunday dinner at Mom's house was a tradition that went back 20 years. The whole extended family crammed into her dining room, kids running around, everyone talking over each other. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like walking into enemy territory. Genesis was already there when I arrived, holding Olive and surrounded by aunts who were cooing over the baby. She looked up when I walked in, her face a perfect mask of concern. Nora, she said softly, I'm so glad you came. Where else would I be? Uncle Ray clapped me on the shoulder. How you holding up, kiddo? Genesis told us you've been having a rough time. Did she? Post-pregnancy hormones are no joke, Aunt Linda chimed in. I remember after I had Tommy, I was convinced the mailman was trying to steal him. Everyone laughed, everyone except me. Dinner was excruciating. Genesis played the perfect new mother, talking about sleepless nights and first smiles while I sat there watching my family fall for her performance. Every few minutes, someone would glance at me with pity or concern. Nora's been such a help, Genesis said, cutting her chicken, even though the surrogacy was harder on her than we expected. Harder how? Cousin Jake asked. Well, she got very attached, more than we anticipated. It's been difficult for her to let go. That's not, I started. Which is completely normal, Genesis continued smoothly. The doctors warned us this might happen. The hormonal bond between a surrogate and the baby can be very intense. I carried her for 9 months, I said, my voice rising. Of course I'm attached. Of course you are, sweetie. Genesis's voice was honey-sweet. But we've talked about this. Olive needs stability right now. She needs to bond with her real parents. Real parents? The room went quiet. Everyone was staring at me. Nora, Mom said carefully, maybe we should talk about this privately. No, I stood up. Let's talk about it right here. Let's talk about how Genesis planned to cut me out from day one. How there was never a real surrogacy agreement. How she's been lying to all of you. Nora, please, Genesis said, tears starting to form. You're scaring me. Am I? Or are you scared because I know the truth? I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Want to hear what your husband really thinks about you, Genesis? Her face went white. What are you talking about? Dominic came to see me. He told me everything. About your plan, about the lies, about how you've been abusing him for years. That's not... I hit play. Dominic's voice filled the room. She said legal contracts would complicate things, but really, she wanted to make sure you had no rights to Olive at all. Genesis lunged for my phone, but I pulled it away. The recording continued. She's been emotionally abusing me for years, Nora. I just didn't have a name for it until recently. Turn it off! Genesis screamed. Turn it off right now! But the room was silent except for Dominic's voice. The restraining order was her idea. She filed it the day after Olive was born. She'd already written the petition, already had the lawyer lined up. She planned this whole thing. Genesis was sobbing now, real tears this time. He's lying. He's having a breakdown. He's been drinking. The Facebook post? Dominic's recorded voice continued. She wrote that weeks ago. She showed it to me, asked if I thought it was sympathetic enough. Uncle Ray was staring at Genesis like he'd never seen her before. Jen, what the hell is this? It's lies, she choked out. All lies. Nora's manipulating him. She's... My phone rang. Dominic. Don't answer it, Genesis begged. Please, Nora, don't answer it. I answered it anyway, putting it on speaker. Nora, Dominic's voice was shaky. Genesis isn't at her mother's house. She lied to me. Where is she? She's here, at family dinner. Get away from her, now. I just found a bottle of pills hidden in her dresser, Rohypnol. She's been drugging me for months. The room erupted. Genesis grabbed Olive and ran for the door, but Uncle Ray blocked her path. Nobody's going anywhere, he said grimly, until we figure out what the hell is going on. Genesis clutched Olive tighter, backing toward the kitchen. You're all insane. Dominic is having a mental breakdown and Nora is feeding into his delusions. Then explain the recording, Uncle Ray said, still blocking the doorway. It's fake. Edited. Nora probably paid him to say those things. Mom stepped forward, her face pale. Genesis, honey, just put the baby down and let's talk about this calmly. Put her down? Genesis's voice went shrill. So Nora can grab her, so she can pretend to be her mother again? I never pretended. You called her our baby in your texts. You bought her clothes without asking. You showed up at the hospital every day like you had some right to be there. Aunt Linda looked confused. But Genesis, you told us Nora was being supportive during the pregnancy. I was trying to be nice. I didn't want to hurt her feelings by telling her she was being obsessive and inappropriate. My phone buzzed with a text from Freddie. Police are on their way to your mom's house. Dominic called them about the drugs. Genesis, I said carefully. The police are coming. Her eyes went wild. You called the police on me? While I'm holding my newborn daughter. Dominic called them, about the Rohypnol. There is no Rohypnol. He's making it up. Then you won't mind when they search your house. She was crying again, but these tears looked different, desperate. This is all your fault, Nora. Everything was perfect until you decided you couldn't let go. Perfect? I stepped closer. Your husband was so miserable he was ready to leave you. You were drugging him to keep him compliant. You destroyed my reputation with lies. How was any of that perfect? Because Olive was mine. Finally something was mine. The room went dead silent. Even Olive stopped fussing. What do you mean, finally? Mom asked quietly. Genesis looked around the room like a trapped animal. Nothing. I didn't mean anything. Jen, Cousin Jake said slowly. What did you mean? I meant I finally had a baby, that's all. But something in her voice was off. Uncle Ray must have heard it too because he pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Genesis demanded. Calling your mother. If you're this upset, maybe she should come get you. No! Genesis practically screamed. Don't call her! Why not? Because she'll just make everything worse. She always makes everything worse. Mom frowned. Genesis, your mother adores you. She's always bragging about how successful you are, how perfect your life is. Perfect? Genesis laughed, but it sounded broken. Nothing about my life is perfect. Nothing ever has been. What are you talking about? I asked. You want to know the truth? The real truth? She was rocking Olive now, her movements jerky and erratic. I can't have children, Nora. Not just fertility problems. I can't carry a baby at all. My uterus it's damaged. Damaged how? From the abortion I had when I was 16, the one Mom made me get in secret because it would ruin my future. The one that went wrong because we went to some back alley clinic because she was too ashamed to take me to a real doctor. Mom's face went white. Genesis, what are you saying? I'm saying you destroyed my body before I even knew I wanted children. And then you spent years asking when I was going to give you grandchildren, knowing what you'd done to me. I didn't know the procedure would... You didn't care. All you cared about was keeping up appearances, just like now, just like always. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Genesis, I said gently, give me Olive, please. No, she's mine. I earned her. I suffered for her. You didn't suffer. I did. I carried her. I gave birth to her. You got to be pregnant, Genesis screamed. You got to feel her move inside you, got to experience everything I'll never have. And now you want to take that away from me too? The front door opened and Dominic walked in with 2 police officers. His face was haggard, but his eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in months. There she is, he said, pointing at Genesis. She's been drugging me for months. The pills are in our bedroom dresser, bottom drawer, hidden in a tampon box. Sir, we'll need you to come with us to give a statement, one officer said. What about my wife? The officer looked at Genesis, who was still clutching Olive and backing toward the kitchen. Ma'am, we need you to put the baby down and come with us. I'm not going anywhere without my daughter. Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Genesis looked around the room one more time, her gaze landing on me. This is all your fault, she whispered. Everything that happens next is on you. Then she ran. Genesis bolted through the kitchen toward the back door, but Uncle Ray was faster. He caught her arm just as she reached for the handle. Let go of me, she screamed, trying to wrench away while still holding Olive. Genesis, you're going to hurt the baby, Mom pleaded. I would never hurt her. She's my daughter. One of the officers stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to hand over the child. No, you can't take her from me. Olive started crying, her tiny face scrunched up and red. The sound seemed to snap something in Genesis. She looked down at the baby, then at all of us surrounding her, and her shoulders sagged. Please, she whispered. Please don't take her away from me. She's all I have. Genesis, Dominic said quietly. You need help. Real help. And Olive needs to be safe. Safe? She's safe with me. I'm her mother. You drugged me for months, Dominic continued, his voice getting stronger. You lied to everyone about Nora. You filed false police reports. How is any of that keeping Olive safe? Genesis turned to look at him, and for a moment her face crumpled. I was trying to protect our family. By destroying it? The second officer had been talking quietly into his radio. Now he approached Genesis with his hands up, non-threatening. Ma'am, we have Child Protective Services on the way. They're going to take temporary custody of the baby until we can sort this out. CPS? Genesis's voice went high and panicked. No, you can't call CPS. There's nothing wrong with me as a mother. You just admitted to drugging your husband, the officer said calmly. That's different. That has nothing to do with Olive. Ma'am, please hand over the baby. Genesis looked around the room desperately, her eyes landing on me. Nora, Tell them. Tell them I'm a good mother. Tell them I love her. Genesis, please, you know how much I wanted this baby. You know how long I waited for her. I know, I said softly. But look what you've done. Look what you've become. Her face twisted with rage. What I've become. I became a mother who would do anything to protect her child, even from her own sister. Protect her from what? From love? From family? From you, Genesis screamed. From your obsession. From your need to play mommy with my baby. Olive's crying got louder. Uncle Ray stepped closer. Genesis, you're scaring the baby. Just give her to someone who can calm her down. I can calm her down. I'm her mother. But Olive kept crying and Genesis started bouncing her frantically, which only made it worse. Here, I said, reaching out. Let me try. Don't touch her. Genesis, she's hungry. When did she last eat? Genesis blinked, looking confused. This morning, I think? It's 4 in the afternoon, Mom said. Genesis, when did you last feed her? I've been so stressed I can't remember. I stepped closer. Genesis, give her to me, just for a minute. Let me feed her. You don't have milk. You stopped producing milk. I have formula in my purse. I always carry some just in case. Just in case what? Just in case I got to see her. Something in my voice must have gotten through to her because Genesis's grip on Olive loosened slightly. You still carry formula? Every day, since the day she was born. Genesis looked down at Olive, who was crying harder now, her little fists waving in the air. She's hungry, Genesis whispered. I know. Let me help. Slowly, carefully, Genesis handed Olive to me. The moment the baby was in my arms, she started to calm down. I pulled the bottle from my purse and offered it to her. She latched on immediately, her crying stopping. How did you know? Genesis asked, staring at us. Know what? How to make her stop crying. I've been trying all day. Because I carried her for 9 months. I know her rhythms, her sounds. Genesis sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I would, but I don't. The CPS worker arrived then, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I'm Sarah from Child Protective Services. I understand we have a situation here. One of the officers filled her in while I continued feeding Olive. Sarah watched us carefully. Who's the biological mother? She asked. I am, I said. I was the surrogate, but there was never a legal agreement. And you're the intended mother? Sarah asked Genesis. Genesis nodded, not looking up. Ma'am, I'm going to need to take temporary custody of the baby until we can sort out the legal issues and the criminal charges. Criminal charges? Genesis's head snapped up. Drugging your husband is a felony. Filing false police reports is a crime. We need to make sure the baby is in a safe environment. Sarah turned to me. Would you be willing to take temporary custody? You seem to have a good relationship with the child. I looked down at Olive, who had finished her bottle and was staring up at me with dark eyes that looked just like mine. Yes, I said. I'll take her. Genesis let out a sound like a wounded animal. No, please, don't take her away from me. But it was too late. The choice was no longer hers to make. 3 weeks later, I sat in family court holding Olive while lawyers argued over our future. Genesis looked hollow, sitting next to her attorney with dark circles under her eyes. Dominic sat across the aisle with his own lawyer, looking like he'd aged a decade. Your Honor, Genesis's lawyer began. My client made mistakes, but she's the intended mother. She and her husband went through years of fertility treatments. With no legal surrogacy agreement, Judge Martinez interrupted, flipping through the file. No contract, no compensation records, nothing. The arrangement was informal, between sisters. The arrangement was fraudulent, Freddie cut in, standing up. My client has recordings proving Genesis planned to deny her parental rights from the beginning. Judge Martinez held up a hand. I've reviewed the recordings. Mr. Wheeler, please stand. Dominic rose shakily. You admit to being drugged by your wife for several months? Yes, Your Honor. And you confirm the statements you made in the recording about your wife's plans? Yes, Your Honor. Everything I said was true. Genesis's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but she shook her head violently. Mrs. Wheeler, the judge said, do you wish to respond to these allegations? Genesis stood up, ignoring her lawyer's attempts to stop her. Your Honor, I love that baby more than anything in the world. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I was desperate, but everything I did was to protect my family. By drugging your husband, he was falling apart. He was drinking, talking about leaving me, saying he didn't want the baby anymore. I was trying to keep our family together. And the false restraining order against your sister? Genesis's voice cracked. I was scared she would try to take Olive away from me. She kept calling her our baby, kept acting like she had rights. She does have rights, Judge Martinez said firmly. She's the biological mother. There's no legal surrogacy agreement transferring those rights to you. But I'm the one who wanted her. I'm the one who planned for her, who prepared for her. Mrs. Wheeler, sit down. Genesis collapsed into her chair, sobbing. The judge turned to me. Ms. Evans, you've had temporary custody for 3 weeks. How has that been? I stood up, still holding Olive. She's thriving, Your Honor. She's gained weight. She's sleeping through the night. She's hitting all her developmental milestones. And what are you seeking from this court? Full custody. And I want the restraining order against me dismissed. What about visitation for the Wheelers? I looked at Genesis, who was staring at me with desperate eyes. Supervised visitation for Genesis, if she gets the help she needs. As for Dominic, I paused. He tried to protect me. He tried to do the right thing. I think he deserves a chance to be in Olive's life. Dominic's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he mouthed. Genesis's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client would like to address the court directly. Mrs. Wheeler? Genesis wiped her eyes and stood up again. Your Honor, I know I messed up. I know I hurt people. But please don't punish Olive for my mistakes. How would awarding custody to her biological mother punish the child? Because Nora doesn't really want to be a mother. She just wants to win. She wants to prove she's better than me. The courtroom went silent. I felt my face flush with anger. That's not true, I said. Isn't it? Genesis turned to face me. You never wanted kids, Nora. You always said you were too focused on your career. The only reason you're fighting for Olive is because you can't stand that I tried to cut you out. I'm fighting for Olive because I love her. You love the idea of beating me. You love being the victim, the wronged sister who everyone feels sorry for. Mrs. Wheeler, Judge Martinez warned, you're out of line. But Genesis wasn't done. She recorded my husband without his knowledge. She ambushed me at a family dinner. She turned my whole family against me. Does that sound like someone who should raise a child? Freddie stood up. Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Wheeler is making accusations without evidence. Sustained. Mrs. Wheeler, sit down. Your Honor, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I carried this baby for 9 months. I felt her first kick. I sang to her every night. I gave up alcohol and caffeine and sushi because I wanted her to be healthy. I didn't do that to win some game against my sister. I did it because I already loved her. I looked down at Olive, who was sleeping peacefully in my arms. Genesis is right about one thing. I never thought I wanted to be a mother. But holding Olive, taking care of her these past 3 weeks, I can't imagine my life without her now. Judge Martinez made some notes, then looked up. I'm awarding full custody to Ms. Evans with supervised visitation for Mrs. Wheeler contingent on her completing a psychological evaluation and anger management counseling. Genesis let out a wail that echoed through the courtroom. Mr. Wheeler, you'll have unsupervised visitation every other weekend, pending a drug test to confirm you're clean. Thank you, Your Honor, Dominic said quietly. As we filed out of the courtroom, Genesis grabbed my arm. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll appeal. I'll fight this until my last breath. I looked her in the eye. Then you'll be fighting for a very long time. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Apparently, word had gotten out about the surrogacy custody battle, and now everyone wanted a statement. Ms. Evans, how do you feel about the judge's decision? A reporter shoved a microphone in my face. I feel like justice was served, I said, adjusting Olive in my arms. Do you have any comment about your sister's allegations that this was about revenge rather than the child's welfare? I stopped walking and turned to face the cameras. My sister drugged her husband, filed false police reports, and tried to steal a baby from her biological mother. If that's not grounds for losing custody, I don't know what is. Behind me, I heard Genesis screaming at her lawyer. Appeal it! I don't care what it costs. Appeal it! Freddie touched my arm. Let's go. You don't owe them anything else. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. What are you doing? Freddie asked. Something I should have done weeks ago. I hit record and looked directly into the camera. My name is Nora Evans. 3 months ago, I gave birth to my sister's baby as a surrogate. I did it out of love because I thought family meant something. I was wrong. I could hear Genesis still yelling in the background, but I kept talking. My sister Genesis planned to cut me out of this baby's life from day one. She filed a restraining order against me, spread lies about my mental health, and tried to convince everyone I was dangerous. She drugged her husband to keep him compliant. She manipulated our entire family. Olive stirred in my arms, making a soft cooing sound. But here's what Genesis didn't count on. She didn't count on her husband growing a conscience. She didn't count on me fighting back. And she definitely didn't count on karma. I turned the camera toward the courthouse where Genesis was now arguing with reporters. That woman wanted a baby so badly that she was willing to destroy everyone around her to get one. Well, she got her wish. She destroyed her marriage, her relationship with her family, and any chance she had of being in this baby's life. I turned the camera back to myself. To anyone thinking about surrogacy, get a lawyer. Get everything in writing. Don't trust family just because they're family. And if someone tries to erase you from your own child's life, fight back. I stopped recording and immediately posted the video to every social media platform I had. Nora, Freddie said nervously. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. My phone started buzzing immediately. Shares, comments, messages of support. Within an hour, the video had thousands of views. Dominic approached us as we reached the parking lot. Nora, can I talk to you for a minute? Freddie stepped protectively closer, but I nodded. I wanted to thank you, he said quietly, for not fighting my visitation rights. I know I don't deserve them. You tried to warn me. You told the truth when it mattered. That counts for something. I'm getting divorced. I've already filed the papers. Good. He looked down at Olive, who was awake now and staring at him with curious eyes. Can I hold her? Just for a minute? I hesitated, then carefully transferred Olive to his arms. He held her like she was made of glass. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. I'm sorry I let your mother hurt people. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Olive grabbed his finger with her tiny hand. I'm going to be better, he told her. I'm going to be the kind of father you deserve. He handed her back to me. I'll see you this weekend? For my first visitation? Saturday at 10. Don't be late. He nodded and walked away, leaving me and Freddie alone in the parking lot. So what now? Freddie asked. Now I go home and figure out how to be a single mom. You know Genesis won't give up. She'll keep fighting, keep trying to make your life hell. I looked down at Olive, who was falling asleep in my arms. Let her try. She already played her best cards and lost. What's she going to do now? Drug more people? File more false reports? The whole world knows what she is now. My phone buzzed with a notification. The video had hit 100,000 views. Besides, I said, smiling, I've got something she never had. What's that? The truth. And a really good lawyer. Freddie laughed. Damn right you do. As we drove home, I thought about Genesis's words in the courtroom. She was right about one thing. I had never wanted to be a mother, but holding Olive, watching her sleep, knowing that I was all she had in the world, I couldn't imagine wanting anything else. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Saw your video. You're an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story. Then another. Going through something similar. Your courage gives me hope. And another. Genesis got what she deserved. Karma is real. I smiled and put the phone away. Genesis had tried to erase me from Olive's story, but instead, she'd made me the hero of my own. You can't erase the woman who brought your blood into the world. Karma always remembers.